Some cruise passengers leave their brains at the pier, demanding the captain turn down the waves or move the sun because it is too bright. Today, we are counting down 55 of the most absurd and hilariously real complaints ever filed at sea. From people offended by the shape of a sandwich to those shocked that fish live in the ocean, these stories prove that common sense is a rare gift. If you think you have seen it all, just wait until you hear what these geniuses expect from a vacation. 1. A woman once complained that the captain was rude for refusing to stop the ship in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico so she could go for a swim. She claimed the pool was too crowded, and since there was water outside, it was only fair she be allowed to use it. She was genuinely offended that the crew would not lower a ladder into shark-infested currents just for her laps. Some people really view a cruise ship as a giant Uber you can pull over whenever you see a nice spot. 2. A guy was left behind in Nassau because he preferred happy hour over the departure time. When he finally caught up, he demanded the cruise line pay for his flight because the ship did not honk its horn loud enough to find him. Imagine a skyscraper-sized vessel waiting for one guy named Gary, who is 3 margaritas deep. The level of entitlement required to think a massive ship should play hide-and-seek with you is a medical mystery. 3. A guest once complained that there was too much food on the ship. They were upset because they felt pressured to eat everything and were gaining weight. They actually blamed the cruise line for their lack of self-control and demanded a discount because they had to buy new pants at the end of the trip. It is a buffet, not a hostage situation. Nobody is forcing the shrimp cocktail down your throat, Susan. Have you ever blamed a restaurant for your own inability to stop eating? Let me know in the comments. 4. A guest in a balcony suite was furious because the morning sun was shining too brightly through the glass. Despite having heavy blackout curtains, they blamed the cruise line for the unwanted brightness of a tropical day. This genius actually suggested the ship should have external shutters, or that the captain should change course to keep their specific room in the shade. Imagine trying to sue the sun because you were too lazy to pull a curtain shut. Should people like this be banned from traveling? Or is the entertainment value worth the headache? 5. One passenger was livid because their 4 massive suitcases did not fit in the closet of their small interior cabin. They accused the cruise line of false storage advertising and demanded a free upgrade to a suite just to house their luggage. Instead of realizing they overpacked for a 7-day trip, they blamed the ship's architecture for being too narrow for their belongings. It is a boat, where every square inch is engineered for efficiency. If your wardrobe needs its own zip code, maybe you should consider a freight ship instead of a passenger vessel. 6. One guest was furious because the water in the brochure was a brighter blue than the actual ocean they were sailing on. They accused the line of false advertising and demanded an upgrade to compensate for the duller sea. It takes a special kind of ego to believe a company can control how the sun hits the Caribbean Sea just to match a photoshopped pamphlet. If the watercolor ruins your day, maybe you should just stay home and look at screensavers. 7. One guest filed a formal complaint because the ship's horn was too aggressive and gave them a fright. Every time the vessel left a port, the traditional blast caused this person to drop their drink, leading to a demand for the cruise line to pay for their dry cleaning. A suggestion was even made for the captain to use a softer, more melodic chime, instead of a signal meant to be heard for miles. It is a mandatory safety requirement, not a personalized alarm clock for your afternoon nap. How do you think a captain would react to being told his ship sounds too mean? 8. One passenger filed a formal complaint because the main pool was too deep for their toddler to stand. Instead of using the kid-friendly splash zone, they demanded the staff drain several feet of water to accommodate their child. Their logic was that a luxury ticket should override the laws of physics. Imagine the audacity of asking to drain thousands of gallons in the middle of the ocean because you forgot to bring floaties. 9. A woman complained that the ice in her drink was too cold and made her teeth ache. She asked the bartender for room temperature ice or if they could microwave the cubes for a few seconds first. The staff had to explain physics to a woman who thought warm ice was a real thing. If you were that bartender, would you have kept a straight face or just walked into the ocean? I seriously want to know how you would handle this level of stupidity in the comments. 10. We have the passenger who thought the cruise was boring because they did not see any whales. They were convinced the cruise line had trained whales that were supposed to jump on command whenever the ship passed. When they did not see a humpback doing a backflip, they claimed the entertainment was lacking and demanded a refund. They treated the entire Atlantic Ocean like a SeaWorld tank with a scheduled showtime. The audacity is honestly impressive. 11. A couple booked the cheapest interior room on the ship, then filed a massive complaint because they did not have a window. They told the staff they felt trapped, and that it was the cruise line's fault for not explaining that an interior cabin meant they would be inside the ship. They actually expected a digital screen or a magic portal to show them the waves. If you want a view of the sea, maybe do not pick the room located in the literal center of a steel hull. It is like buying a basement apartment and being mad you cannot see the sky. 12. We have all heard about demanding tourists, but this one is a classic. A passenger on a Mexican Riviera cruise was outraged that the locals in Cabo San Lucas spoke Spanish. She complained to the guest relations desk that the cruise line should have provided translators for every guest or forced the port staff to speak English only. She claimed it made her feel excluded from her own vacation. Have you ever encountered someone who genuinely thought the whole world should change its language just for their comfort? 13. A couple missed their departure because they were haggling over a $5 t-shirt, and then they had the nerve to blame the ship. Their logic was that, as valued guests, the vessel should have waited at the pier until they were finished shopping. They even demanded the cruise line reimburse their taxi to the next port. A schedule is a schedule, but some people think a 100,000-ton ship is their personal Uber. Why is it always the people with the least sense of time who have the most complaints? 14. Seasickness is no joke, but one woman took it to a hilarious level. She demanded a refund because she felt nauseous while the ship was still tied to the dock in Miami. The water was as flat as a pancake and the engines were barely humming, yet she insisted the ship was rocking violently. She even accused the captain of moving the ship secretly just to prank her. If you get motion sickness while the boat is literally parked, maybe your next vacation should be a nice, stable trip to a desert. 15. Tropical birds are part of the charm of the islands, unless you are this one guy. He complained that the exotic birds in the port were chirping too loudly in the morning. He wanted the ship to move to a different pier, away from the trees, because the wildlife was interrupting his sleep. It is almost impressive to travel thousands of miles to a tropical paradise and then get angry when the local animals act like animals. Did he expect the parrots to check his "Do Not Disturb" sign before they started singing? 16. Believe it or not, a passenger once complained that the captain did not look enough like a captain. They were disappointed because he did not have a white beard or a pipe and looked more like a corporate pilot. They felt the lack of a traditional sea captain aesthetic made the voyage feel less authentic and demanded a meeting to see his credentials. Apparently, being a highly trained maritime professional means nothing if you do not look like a character from a frozen fish box. 17. Photography is a big part of cruising, but one woman was livid because the moon was on the wrong side of the ship. She wanted to take a picture of the moonlight reflecting on the water from her balcony, but the moon was visible from the other side. She actually asked if the captain could turn the entire 90,000-ton vessel around so she could get a better shot for her Facebook page. The sheer scale of that request is honestly breathtaking. How do people get through life with this much confidence? 18. One passenger filed a formal grievance because the ship was too big. They claimed that walking from their cabin to the buffet took over 5 minutes and that the cruise line was discriminating against people who like to be lazy. They suggested the ship should have a moving walkway like an airport or a personal golf cart service for every guest. It is a giant floating city. What did you expect? If walking to the Bacon station is too much exercise, maybe a smaller boat is the answer. What is the laziest thing you have ever seen a person do? 19. Ice cream on a hot deck is a dream, but for one guest, it was a nightmare. They complained that their soft-serve cone melted too quickly in the 90-degree heat. They blamed the cruise line for not keeping the outdoor deck refrigerated or providing special heat-proof cones. They actually expected the laws of thermodynamics to stop working just because they were on vacation. It is truly a mystery how some people handle basic daily tasks without a team of scientists to assist them. 20. We have a passenger who was upset because the horizon looked too flat. They were a firm believer in certain conspiracy theories and were disappointed that the cruise did not provide evidence of the Earth's true shape. They accused the captain of using special windows to distort the view and hide the truth. Imagine trying to enjoy a luxury vacation while simultaneously worrying that the entire ocean is a government simulation. Some people really go looking for problems even when they're surrounded by paradise. 21. Safety should be the priority, but one passenger complained that the lifeboats lacked luxury features. They were upset about the hard plastic seats and the lack of a minibar, arguing that a disaster should not mean a drop in service. A private cushioned lifeboat was actually requested as a reasonable accommodation. Sir, if the ship is sinking, the goal is staying alive, not staying comfortable. It is terrifying that someone would worry about thread counts while potentially floating in the middle of the dark ocean. 22. One woman went snorkeling and came back screaming at the staff because there were fish in the water. She claimed she was not warned that wildlife would be present and that the fish were touching her legs. She actually suggested the cruise line should clear the area of all sea creatures before letting guests in. Imagine the ego required to think the entire ocean ecosystem should be evicted just so you can float around in peace. Seriously, what do these people think lives in the sea? Is it just supposed to be mermaids and glitter? 23. A passenger once complained that the ship was docked too far from the city center in a European port. They were upset about a 10-minute shuttle bus ride and suggested the captain should have parked the 100,000-ton vessel right next to the local cathedral. They did not seem to understand that a massive cruise ship cannot just drive down a narrow cobblestone street. It is a boat, not a Vespa. Some people truly think the world should be rearranged just to save them from taking a few extra steps on their vacation. 24. On an Alaskan cruise famous for local cuisine, a guest was furious about the excessive seafood on the menu. They complained that seeing fresh salmon and king crab was repetitive and demanded authentic food like corn dogs or frozen pizza. You traveled thousands of miles to the fishing capital of the world, yet you are mad that the food is too fresh and local. It is like visiting Italy and being offended by pasta. Some people are truly committed to being miserable regardless of the luxury. 25. We had a guest who was furious because the sun rose on the left side of the ship instead of the right. They had booked a specific cabin to watch the sunrise from their bed, but the ship was sailing south instead of north that morning. They demanded the captain turn the ship around or provide a refund for the ruined morning. It is a luxury cruise, not a custom-built solar system. Imagine being so entitled that you want to reorganize the rotation of the Earth just to match your morning coffee routine. 26. Shopping on a cruise is a big deal, but one guest took the term tax-free a bit too literally. They filled a basket with expensive watches and perfume, then tried to walk out without paying a cent. When security stopped them, they were outraged, claiming the sign said everything was free. They honestly thought the cruise line was just giving away Rolexes as a thank you gift for booking a cabin. This person navigated an entire life and managed to buy a cruise ticket without understanding how basic commerce or reality works. 27. Internet at sea can be slow, but one teenager's father filed a massive complaint because his son could not stream high-definition video in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. He claimed the lack of fiber optic speed was a human rights violation and that the ship should have its own satellite orbiting directly above it at all times. You are in the middle of a vast, empty wilderness, yet you are mad you cannot watch Minecraft videos in 4K. Maybe just look at the actual ocean for 5 minutes and put the phone down. 28. Formal night is a long-standing tradition, but one guy was livid because he was turned away from the main dining room for wearing a bathrobe and flip-flops. He complained that since he paid for the cruise, He should be allowed to dress like he just rolled out of a dumpster. He even claimed the dress code was a form of psychological bullying. If you cannot be bothered to put on a pair of pants for a nice dinner, maybe stay at the buffet with the other people who have officially given up on life. 29. Then we have the guest who filed a formal grievance because the Caribbean sun was too hot. They blamed the cruise line for not providing enough shade over the entire outdoor deck, and for not warning them that the sun near the equator is stronger than in London. They actually asked for a discount because their tan turned into a lobster red nightmare. Have we really reached a point where we need a professional reminder that the sun is a giant ball of fire? 30. A passenger in a lower deck cabin complained that they could hear the engines running while the ship was moving. They were shocked that a massive vessel traveling through the water would have any vibration or sound at all. They suggested the ship should be powered by sails or silent magnets to ensure a library-like experience for everyone. They were genuinely offended that the physics of propelling 100,000 tons of steel required mechanical effort. It is a ship, not a magic carpet. Try a stationary hotel next time. 31. An announcement about a whale sighting actually caused one passenger to file a formal grievance for disturbing their peace. Imagine being so dedicated to a nap that you would rather sleep through a once-in-a-lifetime wildlife moment than hear a 30-second intercom message. Instead of appreciation for the tip, this guest suggested a personal text message would have been more appropriate. It is a massive humpback, not a telemarketing call. I truly wonder if these people enjoy anything at all. Would you be mad at a whale for interrupting your dream? 32. An Ocean View guest was genuinely angry because their window did not show coral reefs or sunken shipwrecks. They expected a submarine-like experience despite being 60 feet above the waves. When the crew explained the basics of buoyancy, the passenger actually suggested weighing the ship down to improve the view. Imagine wanting to sink a billion-dollar vessel just to see a sea sponge. Would you trust this person with a goldfish, let alone a vacation budget? The logic here is truly breathtaking. 33. During a transatlantic crossing, a traveler complained that the night sky was far too bright. Far from city lights, the stars were so vibrant they supposedly ruined the privacy of the outdoor decks. This person actually asked if the crew could dim the celestial light or provide umbrellas to block the galaxy. Imagine being offended by the literal universe because it is doing its job too well. Some people pay thousands to see that view, yet this genius wanted a dimmer switch for the Milky Way. 34. An Alaskan cruise turned sour for a woman who felt the icebergs looked unwashed. She expected the floating glaciers to be crystal clear like the cubes in her drink. But nature is not a showroom. Deeply offended by the sediment and grit found in real-world ice, she accused the line of polluting the water. It is a glacier, not a piece of Swarovski crystal. If you want nature to be sterile and polished, maybe just stay home and stare at a screensaver instead of visiting the wild. 35. Geography is not everyone's strong suit, but one guest was livid because the Eiffel Tower was not visible from the ship in Marseille. Even after the crew explained that Paris is hundreds of miles inland, the passenger insisted the captain had taken them to the wrong country. This led to a formal threat of a lawsuit for misleading destinations. It is honestly impressive to navigate life thinking France is just one small town with a big metal tower in the center. Seriously, what did you guys learn in middle school? 36. Main character syndrome reached its peak when a guest complained about other cruise ships being docked at the same port. Seeing another vessel supposedly ruined the exclusive vibe of their vacation, leading to a request for the captain to tell the other ships to leave. The sheer audacity to think you own the entire Caribbean is mind-blowing. Imagine being so entitled that the existence of other tourists feels like a personal attack. Do you think some people truly believe everyone else is just an extra in their movie? 37. Nature can be so beautiful it looks fake, which led one guest to believe the iguanas and birds were animatronic robots. They were convinced the cruise line controlled the wildlife with batteries to ensure guest entertainment. Instead of enjoying the sights, This person spent the day looking for access panels on the animals. It is a bizarre compliment to the local ecosystem, but the paranoia is on another level. Some folks really cannot accept that the world is awesome without a remote control involved. 38. A tourist on a shore excursion to a Caribbean rainforest filed a formal complaint because it rained during the tour. They claimed the brochure promised a sunny day and that the cruise line should have rescheduled the weather. It is called a rainforest for a reason. The clue is literally in the name. They actually expected the trees to stay dry while they explored the jungle. This is the kind of person who goes to a car wash and gets mad that their vehicle got wet. How do these people manage to navigate a grocery store without help? 39. One guest complained that the sand on a private island was too sandy. They were upset because it stuck to their feet and got into their bag. They suggested the cruise line should pave over the beach or install giant outdoor vacuum cleaners to keep the area tidy. Imagine going to one of the most beautiful tropical islands on the planet and being annoyed that nature is doing exactly what it has done for millions of years. Some people are clearly better suited for a sterilized shopping mall than a beautiful Caribbean beach. 40. One passenger claimed the air conditioning in their room was too cold and suspected a grand conspiracy. They believed the ship was purposely freezing people out so they would spend more money on hot coffee and warm sweaters. Despite having a thermostat right on the wall, they chose to file a grievance instead of just turning it up. It is a special kind of logic to invent a corporate scheme rather than moving a finger 2 inches to the right. Is it laziness or just a need to be a victim? 41. Venice is a bucket list destination for millions, but one guest was genuinely angry that there were no roads for taxis. They filed a formal complaint because the floating city actually required them to walk over bridges and use boats to get around. Apparently, the cruise line was supposed to warn them that a city built on water might involve some dampness and stairs. It is baffling that someone could travel to one of the most famous places on Earth without knowing its most basic feature. Imagine being mad at Venice for having canals instead of parking lots. 42. A passenger once stormed the towel station because the saltwater pool actually contained salt. This guest accused the ship of being cheap by pumping water directly from the ocean instead of using bottled spring water for the main deck. The idea of swimming in seawater while being on a ship in the middle of the sea was somehow offensive to their sensibilities. If you are allergic to the very thing the vessel is floating on, maybe a mountain cabin is a better choice for your next getaway. 43. Excessive politeness can apparently be a crime in the eyes of some travelers. One guest complained that the dining room staff was too happy, claiming the constant smiling and good morning greetings felt like a creepy psychological experiment. This person actually requested that their waiter be more natural, or even a bit grumpy to make the experience feel more realistic. It is truly wild to live in a world where you are upset because people are being too nice to you. What would you do if your waiter was too cheerful? Would you tell them to tone it down? 44. A passenger once called security because their cabin steward was creepy for knowing their name on the first day. These stewards are literally trained to memorize the names of guests in their section to provide elite service, but this guest saw it as a massive privacy breach. They were convinced it was a government surveillance program and demanded the staff member be reassigned immediately. Imagine being so paranoid that basic hospitality feels like a threat. Some people really struggle with the concept of good service in a luxury environment. 45. Foodies are often picky, but this particular complaint is on another level of absurdity. A passenger who ordered a vegetarian meal was outraged to find that the dish was full of vegetables. They claimed they wanted something that tasted like a steak but was made of air and magic, and the presence of actual broccoli was an insult to their palate. This leads me to a serious question for the comments. Do people actually think vegetarian means invisible food? Or are we just failing as a species? 46. One guest was absolutely livid because the ship was docked facing the ugly side of the port in Nassau. They spent their entire afternoon at the guest relations desk, demanding the captain rotate the 100,000-ton vessel so they could see the sunset from their specific balcony. The logistical nightmare of moving a massive ship and resecuring all the lines just to fix one person's view didn't seem to register. It is a port, not a rotating restaurant in the middle of Las Vegas. The entitlement here is truly a force of nature. 47. Even the fitness center is not safe from the realm of the ridiculous. A guest filed a grievance because the weights in the gym felt heavier than the ones at home. They suggested that the ship's motion or the sea air was somehow making the dumbbells more difficult to lift and wanted a discount for the extra effort they had to put in. Physics does not change just because you are on a vacation, Gary. Maybe the midnight buffet is the real reason those weights feel a little bit more stubborn this week. 48. Sleeping on a moving ship is usually a highlight, but one guest complained that the vessel traveled at night. They found waking up in a new country disorienting and demanded the captain only sail during daylight hours so they could watch the progress. The entire concept of a cruise being a way to travel while you sleep completely bypassed them. This person essentially wanted a floating hotel that parks like a van in a parking lot every night. Some travelers want the journey without any actual movement. 49. During a trip to a tropical island, a guest complained that the nature was too loud. The sound of cicadas and local birds was apparently so intrusive that they could not enjoy their piña colada in total silence. They even suggested the cruise line should spray something to quiet down the local wildlife before the next group of tourists arrived. It takes a massive amount of ego to go into a jungle and tell the bugs to keep it down. Do these people want a vacation or a sterile room with a white noise machine? 50. This might be the ultimate winner for a total lack of common sense. A woman complained that her seasickness patches were not working and that she felt terrible. When the ship's nurse checked on her, they realized she had taped the entire box of patches to her arm without taking them out of the plastic packaging. She was furious that the medication did not work through the cardboard and plastic. It is hard to provide a high-end experience when guests are struggling with basic instructions. If you saw someone doing this, would you tell them or just walk away? 51. Room service is usually a treat, but for one man it was a safety crisis. He called at 3 in the morning screaming because his sandwich was cut into triangles. He claimed he requested square cuts and that the points of the bread were a hazard for his children. The kitchen had to remake a ham and cheese because this guy feared the structural integrity of a crust. If you are intimidated by the sharpness of bread, the middle of the ocean is the last place you should be. 52. The all-you-can-eat buffet actually became a source of outrage for a guest who realized the stations had an end time. They claimed that all-inclusive should mean 24-hour service for every single food item, and that the cleanup crew was discriminating against their late-night snack habit. When the omelet station closed at its scheduled time, it was treated like a personal insult and a starvation tactic. This person was surrounded by literal tons of food, yet they acted like they were in a survival movie because they couldn't get a custom pancake at midnight. 53. Navigating a massive ship can be tricky, but one passenger was livid that the elevators did not travel horizontally. They complained that walking from the front of the ship to the back was too exhausting and accused the cruise line of hiding the sideways transport options. A genuine belief existed that there was a secret subway system underneath the decks reserved only for the crew. It is a boat, not a sci-fi teleporter. Imagine the level of laziness required to get mad at a ship for being long. What is the most ridiculous thing you have ever complained about while on a walk? 54. A passenger in an expensive suite was furious because they could see nothing but water for 3 days during a sea crossing. They claimed the brochure promised breathtaking views, and finding the endless blue horizon to be repetitive and boring led to a formal grievance. There was actually a request for the ship to pass closer to some land, or islands with more colors, just to break up the monotony of the ocean. You are on a vessel in the middle of the Atlantic. The nothing but water part is literally the entire point of the voyage. 55. We have the guest who complained that the captain spent too much time driving the ship and not enough time socializing. They felt it was rude that the man responsible for the safety of 5,000 people was stuck on the bridge instead of hosting a karaoke session. A suggestion was made that the ship could just use cruise control, so the captain could be more of a party host in the lobby. It is terrifying to think that some people value a photo op more than not hitting an iceberg. If you were the captain, would you laugh or just kick them off at the next port? After hearing these 55 stories, it is a miracle cruise ships still bother having guest relations desks at all. From people offended by the blue of the water to those wanting to microwave their ice cubes, humanity is clearly hitting a new low. But honestly, who is the real villain here? The passenger asking for a refund because the ocean is loud, or the cruise line for not throwing them overboard? Tell me in the comments, what is the most embarrassing thing you have ever seen a tourist do? If you want more of this chaos, like the video and subscribe. I will see you in the next one.